Hello everyone, it's Jimmy here, and in today's video we're going to talk about a lens that people tend to overlook, and that's the Leica 35mm Summicron version 3 6-element. Now that's a mouthful, but when it comes to Leica 35mm lenses, there are a plethora of choices. Even just for the Summicron line, you have, let's say, the Leica Summicron version 1, the 8-element. This lens is known for its sort of low contrast but high sharpness sort of property. So it renders black and white photos with this really nice gradation. And if you want to shoot color, then the top choice is usually version 4, King of Bokeh, or 7-element. Compared to the 8-element or the version 1, this lens is much more modern with better coding and higher contrast. So it tends to give your color photos more pop. And it's also very small and portable. So I tend to put this lens on my Leica M cameras and just forget about it. Now there's also the 35mm Summicron aspherical, which is the more modern version of the Summicron. Not as perfect as the Apple Summicron that we talked about a few episodes ago, but it's still very good performer. Now when it comes to these lenses, the center sharpness are actually very similar. The difference is mostly contrast, as the lens coating keeps improving. There's better contrast, better flare resistance, and with the introduction of aspherical element in the ASPH version, you get better corner performance. But there's this 35mm version 3 6-element that's sort of like a black sheep in the family. But I thought, glancing at it, it's about the same size actually as the 7-element, and it's not as heavy. And the most important thing is it's only about half of the price of a 7-element in the used market these days. So this lens is produced from 1969 to 1979. It's actually the shortest production lens in the Leica Summicron lineup. The early versions are made in Germany, but later ones, as Leica moved its factory to Canada, so they're produced in Canada. Now, a very interesting thing in the Leica community that is people tend to view the Canadian version of Leica glasses to be inferior to the German versions, which is not true. Because if you want to argue that German Leica lenses are better built, then it's a yes and no, because it's a no as all the Leica lenses are built with the same specification, with the same tolerance at that time. In fact, a lot of the great Leica lenses, especially the ones designed by Dr. Mandler, are developed in Canada, including the beloved 7-element. And when it comes to build quality, like I said, the variation mostly comes from, the improvement in technology, in the machine, in coding, in material. So it mostly varies by production year rather than the place it was produced. But I would also tend to answer it with a yes, because for some lenses, in very rare occasions like the 7-element or the version 4, you have the Canadian version, which has more plastic parts in it, so it's lighter, it tends to break a little bit more, but not for all the Canadian version 4s, because the later ones are actually built with the same standard material as the German versions. If you put them on the scale, they weigh the same, and actually that's how you know without taking them apart. Now, let's come back to this topic of the 6-element or the version 3 of the Summicron. Now this lens, like I said, just by looking at it, it's about the same size as the 7-element, and it's also very light. It's actually better built, believe it or not, than the black version, at least the black earlier Canadian versions of the 7-element, as I mentioned before, which has more plastic part in it. So yeah, why not give it a try, because it's relatively cheap in terms of Leica Summicron lens. So yeah, I bought it, I tried it on and took it out with my Leica MD262, which is my favorite digital camera these days, and took a few photos. And here are some sample photos. Let's take a look. Alright, so what do you think about these photos? At least to me, I think this lens draws magically. Why? It actually has that kind of like a glow that you found on, the steel rim or pre-aspherical like a Summicron, by which I mean you can see a little bit of glow on highlights, on the edges of objects. It adds sort of a organic or more film-like feel to the photo, which I really like, especially when these days digital sensors are so sharp. So yeah, I would pair it with a digital camera to get that sort of vintage and film-like feel to the photo. And also, at first glance, some of the photos might look a little bit mushy, especially without zooming in. And I think that's due to lower contrast of earlier versions of Summicron. But if you zoom in, you can still see every bit of detail. So it's still very sharp, even wide open. By the way, most of the photos I've just shown you are shot either wide open or at 2.8. I deliberately did that so that I can show you the characteristics of the lens. So yeah, it draws beautifully, it's sharp enough, and it's got that magical Leica glow. But if you want to know more about the optical performance of the 6 element, and especially if you want to know how it compares with the 7 element, then definitely stay tuned, because I'm gonna do a head-to-head comparison between these two lenses, because I'm personally also very interested. But yeah, definitely keep it on your list if you still haven't got a 35mm lens for your Leica M-body yet, or if you want to add a more vintage Leica glass to your arsenal, then don't cross this one off, because even though it's quite a bit cheaper, it's a good lens. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Stay tuned for my next episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.